Hi everybody! Today's video is going to be a little bit of an experiment. This is something that I haven't tried before. I've been thinking about trying it for a while, and this weekend a little idea popped into my head, and it was one of those kind of ideas that wouldn't let me go until I'd gone ahead and sat down and tried it. So what I'm going to be trying is tracing out a picture. This is from Ladies of Leisure 2 by Zan von Zed, and actually changing the background, adjusting the picture before I actually start colouring it in, adding my own background, changing things around a lot more than I usually do, to see if I can actually change this picture pretty much completely into the little idea that I've got in my head. And this idea is based around, I'm not sure if any of you have actually seen all the hype and advertising that's going on at the moment about the Fallout TV series. And I'm a pretty big fan of Fallout, so I really enjoyed the series and I wanted to colour a picture that involved that. So I thought, what about if I took a picture and I changed it to fit in with that theme? And the picture I've chosen is from this book here. And this is the lady that was speaking to me that I could change to fit in with the Fallout game, Fallout TV series. So what I've done, I've scanned in this lady, and there she is in the book there. And I've gotten rid of a lot of the background because I want to really change the background to fit in more with the theme that I've got in mind. I think this costume I can change to look like the costume that's actually in the game, the TV show. And I wanted a lady that was showing her back because the characters in the game and the TV show, they wear a jumpsuit with a number on the back, and that's a pretty iconic thing. So I wanted to bring that in with a character that was showing her back, at least some of the number visible there. And what I'm planning to do is to trace this lady onto my own paper, change her costume to look more like the actual game or TV show. I think that should be pretty easy to do with the lines we have there already. I can follow those and just change it very slightly. I will probably need to take out this kind of corset back she's got going on there. I might extend her body down a little bit just so we can see it is actually a jumpsuit. And for the background, I found online, this was a free download of this shape here, and this is one of the vault doors. For anyone who has watched the program or played the game, this was a clip art of one of the vault doors. It was a free download, and I've just deleted what was in the middle with the number because all I really need is this outline here along the outside. I'm going to use this shape around the outside here to be the shape of the actual background, and then try and draw in a suitable background inside that shape. I'm not sure if that is showing through. Yeah, that is showing through. So you can see I want to have that shape in the background with maybe a little bit of an added background inside that shape. So I'm hoping I can get that to work and look something like what it's supposed to be in either the game or the TV show. So I thought maybe I'd just document the process for you guys so you can see how I went about it, what the actual end result was. Maybe it might give some inspiration or spark some ideas. It's something I've been thinking about for a while, and somebody actually did mention it in comments in one of my previous videos, and that's kind of brought it to the forefront of my mind as something that maybe I could try. So yeah, and this idea seemed to really fit in with it, as I don't think there is a Fallout colouring book actually on the market, and at the moment it's something I really want to be colouring because of the series and because I've gotten back into playing the game again. So yeah, hopefully at least it'll be an interesting process, and we'll see how we get along. Okay, this is going to be step one in the process. I'm not exactly sure how well I'll be able to show this on camera because my power supply only just reaches here to plug in my light pad. But this is my light pad, and I've stuck on my lady onto there. And a light pad, in case anybody isn't familiar with them, is a tool we can use to make tracing pictures a lot easier. Because when you switch this on, you can see there it does light up. I'm not sure how well that'll be shown on camera, but that does light up. And when you place paper on the top there, you can actually see the image through the paper. Is that showing up? Yeah, you can actually see the image through the paper. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to trace over the lines for this lady just with pencil at first. I'm going to change up her costume a little bit to turn it into the jumpsuit, the Vault Dweller jumpsuit from the Fallout TV series or game. And then once that's done, I will take this lady off the light pad. I will pop in the background shape, trace that into the right spot on the background. Then I can take the whole thing off the light pad and work in drawing a little bit of a background. But first of all, I will trace off this lady, change up her costume, and then I'll show you how we're getting on after all that. Okay, after a little bit of a cut there, this is later in the day now, and I've been away and I have actually traced out our lady there, and I've changed her costume. I've brought in the original computer printout there, so we can see that, yeah, I have changed her costume possibly a lot more than I could have gotten away with actually doing in the book, and this is why I decided to actually trace her out. I've gone around the background shape here as well, the shape of the vault door, which is a pretty iconic shape, I suppose you can say, in the Fallout universe, so I've put that into the background. I haven't quite decided if I'm going to try and draw something into that shape yet, or maybe just put some sort of a texture or something in the background there. But for now, I think the next step is to go away and to draw around these outlines with the black fine liner, and as usual I'll be using my Unipin fine liner. This is the 0.1. I also have the 0.05 which I'll probably bring in for some of the lines, and I'll try and make the line weight maybe the same as we've got in this Zan von Zed kind of drawing here, to try and keep it as close as possible to the original. But I'm pretty happy with how it's gone so far. I have simplified a few of the bits around here, taken a few little liberties. I've added in this strap across her jumpsuit because we did have a strap there that I wanted to bring in as well as a nod to the original, but still keeping it into the kind of Fallout theme that I want to go with. And I think that's worked in quite well. I should be able to bring that in. But for now, as I've said, I'm going to go away and outline the lady with the Unipin fine liners, and I'll catch up with you once I've done that. And by then, hopefully, I will have decided what I'm going to put inside this shape. I'm thinking at the moment maybe just a texture, but we'll see how I'm feeling once I've actually done all the outlining, so I'll catch up with you when I've done that. Okay, all our line art is done now, and it's just about time to start colouring. I have tried to keep the line weight the same as in the original Zan von Zed picture, which I have at the side here. You can see there around the outside, the very outside of the image, the character we have here, the line art is thicker, slightly wider. So I've tried to replicate that by using my 0.1 fine liner for the very edges, the outside of the image, and using the 0.05 for the line art on the inside, so that I'm as similar as I possibly could be to the original. But I think we are about ready to start colouring now. And I thought that I could use my usual marker base with the pencil shading to have a bit of fun with this one. And I've decided for this outside shape here, I'm not going to try and draw anything into there because it's quite a small shape. I don't want to make the picture any more complicated than what it is. So I thought I'd maybe just stick to a texture in there. So I've pulled out a few markers, and I'm wanting it to look pretty faded and kind of rusty, because the Fallout kind of universe that we're going for, the kind of aesthetic is kind of post-apocalyptic, everything is rusty and faded. So I'm going to try and make that into my kind of rusty metal texture in the background. I've pulled out a few markers, and as usual, I'm jumping into this without trying, so I'm just going to hope that this will work. The colours I have pulled out are from the Ohuhu marker set. A kind of faded red, so I've gone with R12, which is a rose Bouvard, is that? I think that's how you say it, but the R112. I've gone for the terracotta YR5, which I can maybe use around the outside to give that kind of rusty look, and to again play into that rusty kind of look, the BR1 burnt umber. And what I'm going to try and do is make a little bit of a rusty faded metal texture in this outside shape by layering those markers, getting a nice kind of variation, a gradation of those colours going on, and then dabbing on my hand sanitizer gel, which we have here. There we go, the hand sanitizer gel, to give a kind of rusty, maybe mottled, peeling paint sort of effect, or something that looks as if it could be in a kind of worn out post-apocalyptic kind of universe. So I'll go ahead and start with that. For the base colour, I'll be going in with the Rose Bouvard, just to give a very... It's kind of a faded red, less orangey than I would have maybe hoped for, but we're giving that kind of faded red colour. And around the edges of this shape, I thought about maybe bringing in the terracotta to make it look maybe a little bit rusty. And of course you can go ahead and shade on top of that with pencils to enhance that kind of rusty look that we're going for. But I just thought I'd play about with it and see what kind of texture I could get going on. And the burnt umber around the very edges. We are spreading around the outside of our shape, trying fairly hard not to bleed too much into our actual line art, but that is a danger when you are layering the markers. And which is why I decided to try and do the background first, because if we do end up messing up our line art, I can trace that off again and it's not really so much of a big deal. If you are watching this though, then we've managed to salvage it. We can always go around the outside of the background shape there with a thicker marker, maybe a Sharpie or something like that. Maybe the copper Sharpie, I think, would fit in pretty well, just to tidy up that line art a little bit. But we'll see once we've actually gone ahead and done this texture in the background. Again, we're going to be starting the same colours we're going to be using for the whole of this background shape. The rose boulevard, the terracotta and the burnt umber. Maybe if I let this terracotta maybe dry before we go over again. I'm not being too neat here because, as I said, we're looking for a rusty metal kind of texture. We want a lot of texture to be coming through here. Maybe stay away from the very edges with our blending. That's working a little bit better. But we do also want to bring in this burnt umber. Just around the very edges, I thought, and if any other darker shading is needed for this rusty effect towards the middle, I can maybe bring in the pencils, which maybe would be a slightly different colour, but it would guard against having this colour bleeding over the edge of the lines as we're having here. That's looking pretty rusty. That's the effect I was planning on getting. We are bleeding into the line art here a little bit, but I'm hoping maybe we can tidy that up with the ever-present white gel pen. I'm just being pretty scribbly with this. As I've said, trying to give the texture of rusty metal, which I'm hoping will come through, come through in the end. The very inside here, closest to our character, I'm going to try and leave mainly with just the rose boulevard with maybe a few little touches of the terracotta because I made a mistake and went in with the terracotta pen there. But as we are going for a rusty metal kind of texture in the background, I think we can work with that and work it in, make something happen here. But as this isn't really meant to be a tutorial of any kind, we're just playing here really. The main point of the video, I think, in this case is showing that we can change the actual picture and not have to stick exactly with what we have in our colouring books. I could, of course, have collaged this in and just cut out this shape and found some paper that kind of replicated the rusty metal effect that I'm trying to go for. But I thought it might be fun to try with the markers, see what we can get going on. A little bit more accessible maybe. Go, that's the kind of effect that we're looking for. Just dabbing with the pens really. Overlaying these markers and seeing what we can get going on. And it is looking like we'll be going around the outside of our shape with I would suggest probably a copper marker. But yeah, this idea was one that got itself stuck in my head, one that I can't really get away from until I've actually sat down and maybe done it. So I thought maybe you guys would be interested in seeing the process, how I would go ahead of actually changing this picture. And even if you don't change anything of the actual picture, you could just trace out the character and get rid of the background that way, instead of actually having to work into the book and figure out a way to get rid of the background actually in the book. We've done our large area there. Let's go around the edges with the terracotta, bring in a little bit more of that rusty colour. Not being too careful about the brush strokes or pen strokes here. We're going for rusty rundown. Just a bit of a texture around the edges really. We're going to be dabbing it with the hand sanitizer gel as well, which will help to kind of even out this texture. cover any edges that don't really blend as well as we might like. And any kind of splotchiness of the actual pen, that won't really matter at all, as I said, because we are going to be dabbing it with the hand sanitizer gel, which does tend to take away the marker ink to some extent and give us a nice texture. Again, picking up the wrong pen there. I did intend to go back in with the terracotta there, but this is the burnt umber, which we're trying to keep to the very edges. Maybe not entirely all the way around. Maybe if we leave a few little gaps in it there, that will enhance the effect of the rusty metal. Getting a little patina there. Can go over with the second coat of the terracotta. Again, just enhancing that. Kind of dotting the pen on, putting some random little brush strokes. We don't want anything looking super neat and tidy. Oh, picking up the wrong pen. I'm trying to work pretty fast, but again I picked up the wrong pen there. But yeah, going in with this kind of textured effect that we want to have going on, I think I can make it work. That's just a bigger area of kind of rust around the edges there. I have got scrap paper behind here because, as always, markers, the alcohol markers will be going through, especially if you play with them like this and add a few layers. Maybe I've been a little bit too tentative at the top there. Maybe I need to go in a little bit more. Exaggerate that rusty effect. Okay, well that's half of our little background shape done there. We've done half of the background shape there, just dabbing on with the markers, trying to get a little bit of a texture going on. So what I thought I'd do now is go in with the hand cleanser, the hand sanitizer, which, because it's alcohol based, it seems to lift off the alcohol ink and it makes a nice texture, which I have used before to maybe show leather or other textures such as that, or maybe just as a nice texture you can use in the background. It does tend to maybe make your colours spread out over the edge a little bit, so hopefully we won't have that happening too much. So I'm just going to dab a piece of kitchen roll, a little bit of rumpled up, kind of squished up kitchen roll there into the hand sanitizer. Dry it a little bit, because we don't want too much of this going onto our marker. That's what makes the areas bleed. And we're just going to dab it on to see what we can get going on texture wise there. I haven't actually tried to see what would happen if you tried to colour with your markers over the top of where you've used this hand sanitizer, so I'm just hoping that we'll be able to make that work once we actually go on to colour our character in the middle there. But as you can see, the crumpled up tissue with the hand gel is making a nice texture there onto our background that I think we can make look a bit like the rusty metal. Any bits that haven't quite worked, we can maybe go in with the pencils. See what we can get working there. But I was thinking maybe more towards the middle would be more of these bits where the colour has worn off. Ooh, I do like that there. That's working really well. Maybe try a different way of balling up this kitchen paper here. Trying to get into the little areas there without going over our hair too much, because as I said, I don't know how the markers would react to working over the top of this. But that is working pretty well, I think, so I'm going to go with that. And I'll just, over the other side, I will do exactly the same, but I think I'll probably speed through that a little bit or catch up with you when I've actually done that, just so I'm showing you each stage, but not necessarily going through the whole picture on camera. It's just for ideas mainly. So I'll catch up with you once I've gone ahead and done the other side of our background here. There's our background texture pretty much done. Once it's all dried and I can get a good overview of how we're looking, I think I might go in there and work on it a bit with the coloured pencils. But for now, we're going to leave it like that, I think. And I'm just going to use the bronze coloured Sharpie. I thought I had a copper one, but I don't, so I'm going to try it with the bronze, just to go around the outside of this background shape here to tidy up where our markers have leaked over. And then we'll be ready to start basing our main character. I'll start with this side, because that's more likely to be dry. That's covering up pretty nicely where our mark has bled over the edge, and it's toning in well with the colours we've got going on in the background there. So I'm going to go with that. Just tidy up these background edges, and then I'll catch up with you when I'm done. Our background is all based now, so it's time to start basing our main character. And my son has suggested that I give this lady purple hair. So, yep, why not? So I'm going to go in and start basing her hair with R11, a hoo-hoo marker. That is Mauve Shadow. And I'm hoping that this will work over where we have put the alcohol hand gel. As I've said, I've never tried working over where there already is alcohol hand gel on the page, but it does evaporate pretty fast, so hopefully it won't affect the colour of her hair too much. And any areas where the marker has gone over onto her hair, hopefully we'll be able to sort those out with the white gel pen or by going over with the darker colour. So I'm not worried about it too much. This one is just for fun. It's not a serious tutorial or anything. It's just a little bit of fan art for fun. Maybe I should make her look like the character that's in the TV show. There is a lady wearing the same kind of outfit in the TV show, but I'm going my own little way with this, I think, because whenever I do play the game, I make my character have purple hair because I have purple hair myself, so that's the way I usually go. May have to leave the rest of the basing for another day because it's getting pretty dark now. It's getting late in the day. And in places, we do seem to have trouble working over where that hand gel has gone on to the main character. But hopefully it's something we can sort out with pencils over the top. Otherwise, it's not such a big deal anyways, because, yeah, the whole point is to have fun colouring the picture. And so far, yeah, I am really enjoying it. I'm loving the outcome so far. That background has worked really well, so I'm really glad I don't have to be tracing this picture off again, doing all the outlines. As I've said, I am a pretty big fan of Fallout, so I really do wish there was a Fallout colouring book, an official one, and if there is, I've never been able to find it. I'll be leaving it there for today, I think. We have managed to get our background texture done, and that's looking pretty good. I may go in and work on that a little bit with pencils, but I think it's at the moment it's okay. It's not needing too much done to it. We'll go back and look at that when we finish colouring our lady, see if it needs any extra. I've also managed to base her hair today with the purple. So next time we catch up, we'll be moving on to base her costume and her skin and go right into the pencil shading. I'm really liking how this is looking so far, so catch up with you in a second. It's the next day now, and as you can see, I have gone ahead and just done a lot of the marker basing off camera because, as I always say, it's not the most interesting thing to watch and there's not really much I can talk about while I'm doing it. So I've just gone off camera and done marker basing, but I will show you the markers that I did use. For her skin, I used from the Hoo Skin Tone set, I used R196 Barely Beige. That's the colour I used for her skin. For her suit, I picked out a couple of different blues because the reference photo I was looking at, because I couldn't be bothered to fire up the game and actually check, to be honest, but I'm only going to be influenced by the game, not actually to be completely accurate. So from the reference photo I was looking at, these kind of stripes, more padded patches down the arms and down the side there, that seemed to be a lighter colour blue than the actual jumpsuit itself. So for the actual darker blue of the jumpsuit, I used a PB01, a sky blue. And for the slightly lighter kind of padded sections there, I used B120, which is pale blue. That's the marker I used for these padded sections here. Kind of keeping with the faded colour, kind of a little bit desaturated thing that I want to have going on. For the yellow, again, to make it not quite so bright and saturated, more along the golden kind of yellow tones, I used Y3, which is barium yellow. That's what I used for these yellow parts here. For these bits that are meant to be leather, like a belt, and for the ends of her cuffs there, I used yellow ochre, which is Y9. That's one I used for these parts here. For the Pip-Boy, which is this device on her wrist here, or meant to be, I haven't quite drawn it exactly, I used the dull yellow Y7 because I want that to be not shiny gold, more of a dull metallic sort of thing going on. And we do have some resistance there where the hand gel went onto our actual character. So we'll work that in, just give it a little bit of a tarnishing effect going on there. And for the screen, this screen in the middle here, that's actually a glass little computer screen. I've used BG203, Blue Grey 3, that's the colour I used for this little screen in here. For her eyes, I used the pale blue because, again, when I make my character, I give her blue eyes because I have blue eyes. And I think that's about it. We've summed it up. This buckle here is also the dull kind of metal colour. And oh yeah, the same blue I used for the screen, I used for this tube that goes around to this kind of section on the back here. I'm not entirely sure what it actually is, so I couldn't say, but that seemed to be a dark grey, so I'll work with that, make it the same colour as the screen maybe to keep things pretty simple. And as I am keeping things fairly simple, this isn't actually a tutorial or anything, it's just more of a process video so you can see how I actually did it to maybe take the idea and run with it. I'm keeping things to what I'm comfortable doing. So I'm just going to use my normal skin tone colours, which are here. I will link those in the description below, but there isn't going to be any step-by-step tutorial how I coloured the skin. I will probably do the whole thing on camera, so if anybody is interested in like a full video on that, it'll probably be a pretty silent one with not much talking, because once I get into something I'm really enjoying, I don't tend to talk as much, especially if I'm not intending this to be a real tutorial. I'll probably just colour that and have a little bit of fun with it, and maybe catch up with you at different stages as we're going along. But now I've showed you all the markers that I've used for the basing there. That's all I've done off camera, is finish basing off her skin and the rest of her outfit. Now I've shown you all those markers, I think we'll zoom in and I'll start on the colouring, and I'll maybe catch up with you every now and then and explain how I'm doing, how things are going. So that this isn't a super long video, it's supposed to be a little bonus video, maybe an interesting process to follow. So I'll zoom us in and I'll get started on her skin. Alright, we're zoomed in a little bit there, and as I said, because I'm just doing this one for a bit of fun, I'm just going to use my normal skin colour combination for light skin, which I have already done a video on. If anybody's interested in that, I will try and link that in the description, and I will link these colours in the description. But just as a note, the Peaches and Cream that I will be using, the Arteza Peaches and Cream, this one's also a watercolour pencil, because I couldn't put my hand on my actual Peaches and Cream pencil. It's one I do use a lot, so it might well have run out and I just don't have one, but I did order a few watercolour pencils for Peaches and Cream because it's one I do use a lot. So yeah, this one isn't actually the Arteza pencil, it's a watercolour pencil, and because this skin tone is pretty much the same colour as this pencil, I'm just using it to map out where I will have my darkest shadows coming in. And as usual, because she is in kind of 3/4 view, I'm probably going to have my light coming from the right to cast that shadow of the nose over this part of her face to make the shading a little bit easier. So I'll just go ahead and shade that. Maybe catch up with you when I'm done, unless anything interesting comes up in the meantime. That's the first pass with the Peaches and Cream pencil that I've done there, and I thought I'd bring it up as I did notice there's a few splodges on her skin of her hand here, where the hand gel has gone onto the white paper where her skin was going to go, and the marker hasn't been able to work on top. So that's something to note. If you do use the hand gel with the alcohol marker, the markers probably won't be able to work on top. We do have some problems here with it on the metal part of her Pip-Boy there, and we do have a few little splotches there, kind of on her lower back, but hopefully we'll be able to cover those with the pencils. If we blend with the white and use a few darker colours around those areas, we should be able to get away with it. I'll just move on to the next colour now, which is apricot, and I'll catch up with you when I've done the skin or if anything else of interest does occur. I know you've all seen me colour skin loads of times, so unless anybody does actually want a full-on tutorial of any parts of this video, then I'll probably skip over most of the pencil shading unless I'm doing any fancy effects or anything, because yeah, it's all pretty standard. As I've said, yeah, just plain, just for a little bit of a process video. As a little bonus, something interesting. Of course, if all else fails, there's always the white gel pen we can maybe use to help with these splotches. I think personally in this case that the background effect that we do have going on there, we've ended up with, that is worth having to deal with a few little splodges on the actual character. So yeah, I'm happy to carry on and just work with what we've got, I think. Moving on to burnt ochre now, which is my first kind of lighter shadow sort of colour. Especially around her cheek area, I come in with the Castle Arts Flesh Deep. And for the blushy part of her cheeks, I tend to use the Scarlet Red these days, which seems to work quite well. This is the Scarlet Red. The last few times I've used it, it's been on top of a cream colour base marker, so hopefully that will work. This is Hazelnut Brown, just to get this side of her face mainly done. Keep it looking pretty dark. We do want this to be the darkest side of her face. And knowing me, I'll probably come in along the edges there with the white gel pen for a few highlights. The darkest shadows are with the burnt umber, which is very teeny tiny at the moment. This is Castle Arts burnt umber. It's a really nice dark brown, so I do use it a lot. The first time I use each pencil, I'll try and mention it, but no guarantees. This is me. I do tend to get carried away while I'm doing anything like this. Something I'm really excited to do. Another little note there, I've had to resort to bringing in my Arteza white pencil to do a little bit of blending here. The polychromos just wasn't working on this paper. I think it's mainly a paper issue more than anything, because usually I can blend pretty well with the polychromos white, but in this case, yeah, I had to bring in my Arteza. That seems to be working a lot better. So I might stick with that for the rest, if it will last. It's very, very small. But it seems to be doing a better job, so yeah, I think I'll stick with that one. It's a little tiny piece of eraser dust that's fallen onto the page there, and I like that, so I think I'm going to give her a beauty mark. Yeah, I like that. I'm not really planning to do a super time consuming, really precious job of the blending and shading on this. As I said, it's just for fun. Plus I'm trying to film the whole thing, so I do actually have it on tape in case anybody wants anything in particular to be seen, but yeah, it's mainly for fun, so I'm trying to keep aware of the time so that maybe I can get this out as a little bonus video before my finished pages is due. Before we move on, I think I'll do her lips. Finish off her face doing her eyes and her lips. So for her lips, I tend to use Scarlet Red and the Flesh Deep. Maybe bringing in the burnt umber in the corners or for any shadows that I'm thinking it's needing. But it seems to work with doing this kind of combination for skin to use those colours for kind of natural looking lips. Of course with gel pen highlights. And again the Arteza white for the blending, because that seems to be doing a better job right now. Very possibly a paper issue, I think. Although I would like to invest in some Prisma whites and see how well they do for blending. Working back on top of the white there to add a little bit extra colour. Her lips are looking a tiny bit pale, I thought, so yeah, come back over the top with the colours. There's a little bit of the gel pen highlights on the right side, because that's where I decided my light was coming from. That should hopefully work. And while I'm thinking on it, I'll see if I can dig out some blue colour so we can shade our eyes there. Okay, hopefully I can make these work. This one is actually a Albert Dürer watercolour pencil. Ultramarine Light, I think this one was called. I do love this colour and hopefully it will work to be shading here for our eyes. And then we have the Arteza Indigo. Blend those with the white. Usually I try and do a few of these little lines. If the girl I'm colouring has really big eyes, I try and put in a couple or a fair few of those little lines there leading out from the pupil. A couple of greys here to shade the whites of her eyes. This is Stone Grey from Arteza, a really very light grey. And I usually add some very light grey, at least to the top part of her eye that will be under her eyelid, so that I can come in with the white gel pen and add the shine lines. This one is Concrete Grey. along underwear of her eyelid, across the shadow and the edge of her eye, because the eye is obviously like a sphere, like a ball, so the shadow will be to the edges. You shade them the way you would shade a sphere. And to save digging around, I'll go in with the Flesh Deep for this little part of her eye here. And a tiny little bit of scarlet red, very lightly. And my light is coming from the right, so we had the big highlight on the right, little one under it, and shine lines. And you can see that because we've got that grey under there, we can come in with the shine lines. Same on this side, big highlight, little one and shine lines. Just my usual way to colour eyes. So there we go, that's her face pretty much done, I think, apart from her ear, which I always forget. So I'll go ahead and do her neck now and her arm. Maybe catch up with you when we're moving on to do her hair. Okay, I'm thinking that'll pretty much do for her skin. It's good enough for me. So I'll move on next to do her hair. I think we did in the end manage to blend in or hide the little marks we had going on with her skin on her arm. I think that's worked in pretty well. You wouldn't be able to tell there was any problems with the markers there, so I'm pretty happy with that. So yeah, time to move on to her hair now, I think. For her hair, I thought I'd try and stick to the Castle Arts pencils because they're slightly harder than the Arteza, so they hold the point a bit better. It's a bit easier to do hair with them. And the colours that I've picked out, I have my Polychromos white and black. I thought the white I might be able to go on top of this marker here to maybe put in a few kind of highlights. I have the black for the darkest shadows. For a dark purple, I picked Purple Lake Deep. For a kind of mid-tone, I've picked out lavender. And if we work with the actual marker colour that's down on the paper, I think we can get something working with that. I've tried a little bit here, and the two colour purples seem to work together pretty well. So I'll carry on with that and we'll see what we can make happen. The Polychromos white does seem to be going over these areas where the markers have bled onto her hair, and I've kept to the Polychromos white for highlights for the hair, again because it's a harder pencil, easier to hold the point. And because my Arteza pencil is better for the blending, so I'd like to try and keep it for that if possible. But yeah, that does seem to be working there for where the marker's gone over the edges. I think if we do bring in the white gel pen as well, a little bit of highlight there, that should be hiding that quite nicely. And these parts where the marker hasn't really gone over where the hand gel was on the original illustration, I think we can probably disguise that with a bit of pencil work, but we'll see as we go along. I'm just using this white to pop in a few highlights. We'll try this lavender for the mid-tones, which I think should work pretty well. Keeping the colour of the marker also there as a little bit of a lighter colour again, and bringing in this black. And we think there should be slightly darker shadows. But I do love colouring hair, so there probably won't be much talking during this part, and I'll probably be catching up with you again once I've got a little bit further on. Okay, we're looking pretty good there, I think. The pencil work has covered up some of where that marker was resisting where the hand gel was. And I think if we just add in a few of my usual white highlights on a few of these strands of hair, they won't be hardly noticeable. Or they will be hardly noticeable, rather. And we'll be good to go. Carry on, I think. And her hair will all be more of the same repeatedly. So yeah, I'll probably catch up with you when we're done with that. And then we'll be moving on to her clothes. But if anybody does want any other separate tutorials for any part of this, just drop me a comment and I will get onto that. Also, I do have pretty much the whole process, at least of the pencil work, on film. I have all of this background on film as well, so if anybody wants to see any of that in the kind of entirety, then also, yeah, drop me the comments. I'll see what I can do. But back to the hair. Okay, that's all of her hair done now. I think I've maybe gone a little bit overboard with my white gel pen highlights, but hey, I was having fun. And I think it's looking okay so far. We are getting a little bit pressed for time. I've been filming for around 2 hours now. I'm thinking I might just about have time to go ahead here and do this Pip-Boy here. Give it a little bit of a dull sort of metallic finish to it. Maybe a little bit tarnished. So I'll see what we can get done with that. Okay, I've been working away on a Pip-Boy there with the pencils that I usually use to colour a gold sort of colour. The base again was the Y7, which is dull yellow, and these are the pencils that I usually use on top of that. I've been using the Polychromos black for the very shadow areas. I've just started doing that, and I actually paused the recording and forgot, so I'll just go over again what I was doing here, just so you've got a bit of an idea of how I was coping with getting that metal texture. The pencils I was using are Castle Arts Gold. We have Green Gold 076 GP. We have Earth Green 201 GP, Slate Grey 200 GP, and we have Naples Yellow Light 073. I think that one is actually normal Castle Arts, that Naples Yellow Light 073. There might be one in the Castle Arts Gold, but that's the one that I'm using. And to get the texture, first of all, I was going in with the Slate Grey in the darkest kind of areas, and maybe scribbling a little bit to get the colour down, because we're going for a sort of tarnished, old looking metal. So I was scribbling a little bit, trying to get a little bit of texture going on in those more shadowy areas. And I've managed to work in these kind of areas where the marker hasn't quite gone onto the paper because it's resisted with this hand gel here. I've used those to make a sort of tarnished, maybe tarnished texture going on there, and this part here where the blue has bled into the yellow, I think that's worked pretty well as well to give a nice little tarnished sort of area there. Maybe there's a little bit of copper in this metal and it's turning blue as it tarnishes, but I think that's working pretty well. So the first colour I was using is that Slate Grey, just really scribbly, trying to get a little bit of texture laid down there. The next colour is the Earth Green, again going in for the next kind of darkest, or the next lightest rather, areas, being a little bit scribbly as we were with the markers here, not really worrying too much about blending. It's texture we want rather than blending. So filling in a few more of the shadows with this kind of scribbly texture. The next colour is Green Gold, which again, really scribbly, trying to build up that old worn looking texture on this metal here. I think we've got it working pretty well, I think. I did say, while I was happily talking to myself, I forgot to restart the recording, that I might put in a few little highlights around these edges just to separate this device from the background where these blobs are going over both areas, those hand gel blobs. I might put a few little highlights along those edges just to separate that out and make that stand out a little bit, but we don't want it to be looking super shiny. This is a Naples Yellow Light. I'm going to put a few little kind of touches of this one. Again, this is more of a highlight colour, so I'll add it along this edge where the light would be coming in. But we don't want it to look super smooth and shiny, so I'm trying to be a little bit sort of scribbly with that. I'm trying not to go over these areas because I do like how that's working to make a kind of distressed metal look. And the black is for the very darkest shadows. I can't remember whether I mentioned that now, but the black is for the very darkest shadows. Again, trying to keep it fairly scribbly, going for texture more than anything. As I said, I will bring in a little bit of this white gel pen, maybe smudging a little bit. As I said, I don't want it to look super shiny because we're talking old and tarnished metal here. So yeah, I'll try and smudge that a little bit just to give a little hint of maybe there's a little bit of shininess left there, but not super much. And to separate out our Pip-Boy device from the background with a little bit of that highlights. Okay, now for the screen in the middle, which will probably be all I can manage to get done today. Sticking with Castle Arts again, I've got Cool Grey Deep there, that's 066. I just want to try and add a little bit of a shadow to this screen here. And this will be pretty shiny and reflective. We don't really want this to be looking like it's corroded. So we'll go over those marks where the hand gel is affecting the marker. Just blend those into the shadow. I might add in a little bit of the ultramarine light. Let's see how that blue works. Yeah, that's working quite well. And I want to keep these marks going kind of diagonally because, as I said, this is a glass screen here. So we want to try and make it look as if the light is reflecting on that. We'll try blending that with the Arteza white, which is working a lot better than the polychromos for blending on this paper. Make it look like there's some sort of light reflection going on there, and we can go in with the white gel pen to add a little bit more highlights to that. Okay, we'll maybe add in some white gel pen, again going diagonal. I think that works pretty well. While I have these pencils out, I'll go ahead and colour in this buckle here that I've gone over with the same yellow marker, dull yellow I think it's called. So there we go, that's what I've managed to get done today. We'll move on to colouring a jumpsuit next time, and I think we'll probably be able to get it done. And fingers crossed, I'll be able to get everything edited and up as a little bit of a bonus extra video. So I'll catch up with you all again in a few seconds, which for me will be a couple of days. So see you in a bit. Okay guys, today there isn't really super tons more left to do. I thought I'd start today with working on her jumpsuit here, so I've picked out a few colours that I thought I might be able to use for that. Here we go. Of course, I've got the polychromos black and the white. I thought I might be able to bring in this Albert Dürer. I think it's called ultramarine light, is it? Yeah, light ultramarine. I thought I might be able to bring in that for a bit of a light shade. I have sapphire blue and midnight blue. Those are both from Arteza. That is A505 and A515. To maybe get a little bit of shading going on, with the black for the darkest shadows and the polychromos white maybe for a little bit of highlights, because I'm trying to keep my Arteza white for blending. As it's getting a little bit short now, I'm not quite sure how long that will hold out, so I'll try and keep that for when I really need it. And these are the colours that I'm going to try and shade this blue with. And for these darker blue areas here, I thought I'd try and start with this midnight blue. Again, trying to keep things looking pretty faded, but still trying to get our values of the shadows and the highlights in here. So I thought I'd try and fade from this midnight blue into the sapphire blue and see how we get along with that. Hopefully that'll work. Again, jumping in without really testing. And I figured I'd maybe work on this arm, do this arm with my 3 shades of blue here, see how well I get on. Maybe just coming back to you after that if there's a little bit of note that I think I might need to bring up for you guys. But yeah, once you know the colours, I think you'll be pretty much good to go. Though of course, if anybody does want any part of this kind of made into somewhat of a tutorial showing how I do the whole thing, then yeah, as always, just drop me a line in the comments. Her arm is pretty straight here, so I'm just trying to shade it as if it's a cylinder, just coming down here with the light coming from the right. As I said earlier on, the light will be coming from the light, so the darker areas will be over here on the left. I'm trying to go over, I'm not sure if that's picking up on camera, but there are a few bits here where that hand gel has resisted the actual marker coming onto the page. I'll try and emphasize these folds a little bit as well. I'm not sure if they would actually be there in this kind of jumpsuit style outfit, but they were in the actual Zan von Zed image, so I've brought them over to see if I can kind of bring those in. Again, as kind of homage to the original colouring book art. Okay, let's see if we can bring in this sapphire blue now, how well that'll blend in. Yeah, that's working pretty nicely colour-wise, I think. Though we might need to blend it into there a little bit better. Yeah, that's better. My line was a bit too harsh there, I think. But yeah, these colours do seem to be working quite well together. I think it's fairly close to the actual Fallout jumpsuit colour, so yeah, I'm going to go with it. But anyways, I'm inspired rather than trying to depict it exactly, so I think we have a little bit of wiggle room there. We don't have to be exact. And these colours are working pretty much together, so I'll just go with it, I think, and see how far we can take it. Just blending that sapphire blue into the actual midnight blue. Then we'll come in with the highlights and see if we need any extra shading there, any extra shadows. Maybe we can blend in a little bit of this light ultramarine. This is closer to the actual colour of the marker here, so it's just softening the edges a little bit. Maybe acting to blend these colours slightly more together. Yep, that's working. I think once we bring in the polychromos with the white there on the edges, maybe a little bit of black into the darker shadows, we'll be cooking with gas, as they say. And because we're working over the top with pencil there, we are smoothing out the kind of splotchiness we have got coming through the marker, and these few little areas where we do have the resist, where the hand gel got onto the actual piece of our character where we wanted to be colouring. I think we're working pretty well in covering up and smoothing out there. But I'm not actually using the white for blending here, just more as highlights than anything, working on top of the marker. Because yeah, I'm trying to practice, to be honest, working with lighter colours on top of the darker markers, because usually I put my pastel kind of lighter colour markers as the background and try and work on top with my darker pencils. But obviously you can work the other way around with lighter colours on top of darker markers, although this blue is more of a mid-tone than a dark really, but still I'm trying to practice the technique of bringing in the highlights. Let's try the black for a few darker shadows here. As the image is pretty graphic, it's really not realistic at all, so we can get away with bringing black for our shadows, which usually I don't tend to do a heck of a lot. Occasionally, yes, I do admit I have used it, but I do try not to. I think that's working really well. Probably need a bit more shadow here, I think. Maybe a little bit of highlight along the edge. I am, as usual, mixing my pencils, but if anybody wants to try anything like this, then feel free to just pick out from your pencil sets whichever colours you think would fit or work together. Maybe stick to a one pencil set if that's how you like to work. I do tend to mix and match quite a lot. As I did say before, I'm not going for a super precious proper blending and shading with this one. It's just for fun. So yeah, that's good enough for me, I think. Good enough for the end result I have in mind is the best way to put it. That's probably good enough. Although, as always, as many layers, as little layers as you want. Blend as well, or as roughly as you want, or even don't blend at all. It's all personal preference, and I'm just popping in the usual white gel pen highlights there. We might get one here, I think, because this, I've made it as if this fold of the jumpsuit is going over the top of her cuff, so we'll add a little bit of that there. Possibly darken these shadows slightly. It's a little bit hard to tell, to be perfectly honest, because I'm underneath a couple of lamps here, so it's a little bit hard to tell how dark those shadows actually are. I'm sure you're all getting the actual idea of how I'm aiming to go ahead with this. So I'll go ahead, I'll motor along, and I'll shade this jumpsuit in, I think. Maybe just catch up with you if anything interesting comes up along the way, any little techniques I need to explain. And as I don't really want this video to be dragging on for actual ages, yeah, I'll just catch up with you at some separate points when anything interesting goes ahead. Okay, I've tried to use the polychromos white for a little bit of blending with these blues, and it seems to be working a lot better than it was on her face, so I'm not entirely sure what the problem was there. Maybe it was because I used that watercolour pencil on her face and the white just couldn't cope with blending that, but for these ones here, these colours on her jumpsuit, it seems to be blending rather well, so I might stick with that to get a little bit of a smoother finish going on there, although again, I'm still not going for a super finished and polished look for this one. Okay, I think I've pretty much finished all the shading for the darker blue there. I did carry on trying to blend a little bit with that white polychromos, which seems to have worked okay with these blues, so that's a good thing. I did try and bring in a little bit more contrast on this sleeve here, using the black closer to the white there, because the more contrast that something has, the closer to you it seems, the more it grabs your attention. So I tried to put more contrast on this sleeve because that would be slightly closer to us, and I think that's working pretty well so far. For these lighter parts of her costume here, where it seems to be slightly padded and it's a slightly lighter blue, I'm going to try first of all shading with this light ultramarine, maybe coming in with one or two of the darker colours, or maybe seeing how well it'll just blend straight away into the midnight blue. I don't know. We'll see how we go with that. But first of all, I'm going to just try shading with this. Where's a good place to start? Maybe here will be a good place to start. First of all, I'm just going to try starting shading with this light ultramarine. And as with their arms, as it's a curved area, the edges would be slightly darker again. Because it's padded as well, that would mean this bit would be slightly curved. We'd also have a shadow coming down from this waistband here, probably. I suppose I should really bring up my reference photo again so I can actually see how this padding would be shaded, but I'll give it a good guess, I think. Again, not trying to be super precise, just give the kind of vague idea that this is kind of padded, shaped a little bit, and this piping along the edges, we're going to give that a little bit of a shading as well, maybe some white highlights, maybe bring in one of the darker blues as well. I'm thinking, yeah, maybe see if it can shade straight into the midnight blue with a little bit of the white. A little bit of the white for blending, but we'll see how that goes. I don't really want to dilute this and bring in the water because I don't really want my paper buckling any more than what it already has. The hand gel has made it buckle very slightly. I don't really want to make the paper buckle anymore. So I'm going to try and keep this pencil dry, even though it is a watercolour pencil. And just bring it in for the shade along the edges there. I think there is a periwinkle blue in the Arteza set that could have possibly also worked, but this pencil was closer to hand at the time. So I just brought that one in, and it seems to work quite well on top of this pale blue because this is the pencil we used to shade our eyes. Let's try shading straight into the midnight blue. I have no idea how that would work. But we don't want this to be as bright as the colour of her actual jumpsuit, so maybe this will help. I'd have more of a shadow here because of the way our light is coming. I'm going to try to put in a little bit of shadow in between each of these kind of raised, sort of padded areas. A tiny little bit along these edges. I'll bring in the polychromos white to try and blend that a little bit, to give a highlight in the middle of each section where it's going to be bending upwards and outwards. I'm entirely sure that's working exactly how I would like it to. We'll blend with the white. And then maybe bring in the black, I'm thinking, see if we can get that looking a little bit more three-dimensional. It's looking a little bit flat at the moment to me. I'll just shade with the light ultramarine down the edge of this little bit of piping so that looks as if it's its own little 3D shape. And then I'll try bringing in the black, maybe for a little bit of shadows here. That's better. I think maybe I was a little bit tentative with my shading there. That's working a little bit better. Just bringing the pencil strokes from the edge into the middle, maybe suggesting this is a different kind of type of material or fabric, rather. Getting a little bit more layers and blending, and I think we've got that looking something close to what I was originally aiming for. So I'll just add a few little white highlights to that on the edges of these piping kind of parts, maybe towards the very middle of these kind of padded bits here in this section down here. Like, oh, not 100% sold on there, but it looks okay, so I think I'm good to go. A little bit of tidying up, and now I have to hope that I can replicate that and the other little bits of padding I do have down the side of her suit there and down her arm. I'll maybe catch up with you when those are done, and then all we have left to do really is these yellow parts. We have the belt, and then decide whether I'm actually going to do anything with this white in the background. Okay, I think I've got something pretty similar, if not the same, happening on this padded part down her arm and on this bit underneath her arm there. So I'm pretty pleased with how that's looking now. And for this kind of tube thing that's going down her shoulder and into the middle of her back, which I'm not exactly sure what it is, in the reference picture that was kind of a dark grey. So I'm going to go ahead and shade that with Cool Grey Deep, that's 066 from Castle Arts. I'd try and add a little bit of shading with that, maybe come in with the white or the black. And I think we can maybe get something going on with that. It's not really a big enough area to worry too much about shading, I don't think, but we do want to give some kind of indication that it is a kind of 3D little pipe or tube of some sort. So I'm just going to add the deepest shade with this Cool Grey Deep. Kind of a little bit difficult when I don't exactly know what this thing is, but it was kind of a dark grey, maybe a black, depending on the lighting, I think, in the reference picture I was looking at. So something like that, I think. So let's try blending that a little bit with the white polychromos, and then maybe add a little bit of a black, and possibly some white gel pen highlights, but I'm not sure if I am going slightly overboard with those on this, but as I've said a few times now, this is just for fun, and I do enjoy my white highlights, so we've pretty much covered up those little parts down the middle of her back there where the alcohol gel was resisting the markers, so that's also all good. A few little white highlights to make this look as if it is something going down her back there. I think that's working okay. I'll leave it as is. It's not really a prominent part of the picture, so I'm not going to fuss around with it too much. Just tidy up a little bit there. And okay, I think we're good to go with that. Now I think all we have to do is the brown leather and the yellow. For these yellow parts on her costume, I was shading with Terracotta Light 011 from Castle Arts, just to add a little bit of shadow towards this left side because my light is coming from the right. And along the right side where my light is coming from, I was adding in the white polychromos just on top of the marker there. That's a little bit of a highlight. Just smoothing out this shading here with the cadmium yellow light, that's 004 from Castle Arts, just to smooth out this terracotta a little bit because this colour is pretty close to the yellow that was on the marker, so I'm just using it to blend there. And maybe we'll come in with a little bit of this burnt umber just for some darker shadows. Not too much of those. Just underneath where these folds are kind of overlapping each other. I'm going to add some white gel pen just as highlights because we do have some places there where our marker has gone over the edge, so just to disguise that a little bit, and because I do love to do them, white highlights along the edge that's closest to the light source. And I think that works quite well, so I'll just do these other couple of little bits of yellow here and then catch up with you. I think that's worked pretty well there for the yellow, keeping most of the shadows here in this part that's under her arm and the furthest away from the light. These on her back here, more of the brighter yellow because they are closer to where the light would be shining. So now all we really have to do is these kind of brown leather bits for this strap on her arm and for the ends of her cuffs, so I'll just quickly shade those. This is the burnt ochre that I did use for her skin. I think that will work quite well for shading these kind of cuffs on the edge of her jumpsuit, and I'll maybe bring in the burnt umber as well for some darker shading. I might try and give a little bit of a leather texture here. We do have some texture going on anyway from where the marker has kind of resisted where that hand gel was, so if we play up to that and try and make it into a sort of leather texture, I think that will work quite well. Not really trying to cover up where these kind of marks are, where the marker was resisting. I'm just working with them, and I think that kind of lends itself to this sort of worn out post-apocalyptic kind of look that we're going for. So with a little bit of shading I think we'll be fine. Of course the usual white gel pen highlights, maybe adding in a few other little texture marks there. white polychromos. Again, playing up that kind of texture. There might be some sort of weathered leather there. Yeah, I think that's working really well. Looking really old and kind of scratched up there. Be emphasizing it a little bit with the white as well. There we go, that's pretty good. Let's do the same again for the strap and for our other cuff. No kind of resisting kind of alcohol marks here. So I'll just make a little bit of a leather texture with the pencil. Just with a little bit of cross-hatching, kind of scribbly marks. I actually bring in a little bit of the black on this strap on her arm here. Thinking it might need a little bit of a darker shadow. There we go. I think I'll zoom us out a little bit now. Okay, I think the actual colouring part there is finished. And originally I was planning to leave her like that with just this white in the background here. But when I actually showed her, during the progress, I showed her to my other half, who's also a fan of the Fallout games. I showed her to my other half and he said, what are you going to do with all this white around the outside? So that kind of indicated to me that maybe I should not leave it with white around the outside. And then I thought maybe, again, looking for some sort of a texture, maybe a sort of a creamy colour, maybe crumbling, peeling plastic kind of texture would work, or something along those lines. There's kind of a creamy beigey colour, not exactly white. I think she would work quite well against that. So I'm going to have a look through all my collage papers now and see if I can find something that I think would fit with this. Alright, I'm back after a quick check there. I didn't find anything kind of beige or kind of creamy colour, which is what I was originally aiming for. So what I thought I would try and do is use this pastel paper, just from this book here. Down Rowney pastel paper. This is that colour there. And I think I'll use that and maybe try and grunge up the edges a little bit with chalk pastels. Just putting a kind of faded layer around the edge there, blending it up into the middle with a dark brown and maybe the black right around the edge. Then I will come in and draw a frame, because as you can see, that lady doesn't go right to the edge of the paper, so I'm going to need to trim her off there. So I'll draw a little frame where she can be like resting on the frame there and coming up into the rest of the paper. Hopefully that will work. If you're watching this, then yay, it's probably worked. I've just laid up some scrap paper there so I don't make as much of a mess, and I'll catch up with you when I'm done, see what I can make happen with this. I do like the texture. There's a bit of a texture coming through there, kind of a linen sort of texture. So that might be quite interesting. I do like the way that it's sticking into the texture at the very edges of this paper. Maybe that can be something that I can make work. I've had a bit of fun grunging up the edges of her paper there. I've sprayed it with a little bit of fixative, so I'm going to wait for that to dry now before I go in and try and draw my little frame. As that's starting to dry, I'm going to go in and try and mark out my frame. I think I'll be going in possibly about 1/2 centimetre from the edges of the page. Just marking it out both ends with the ruler, around about 1/2 centimetre. And then joining up the lines. The same for along all the edges. I will come in 1/2 centimetre, join up those lines, and then go over that with the black pen. Maybe marking in 2 or 3 places just to make sure this line is kind of accurate, and 3 and 1/2 centimetre away all the way down the page. This paper I did actually try printing out colouring pages onto this paper, or a colouring page rather, onto this paper. I had it from a previous project from a couple of years ago now, and hadn't actually used it. I thought maybe I could try copying a colouring page onto here, but no, that was a massive failure. The pencils wouldn't work, paper was way too soft, it was tearing up. It wasn't much good for any of my normal colouring kind of uses, so I've had it in my kind of collage pile for a while. There is some nice colours in there, kind of earth tones I think I ended up buying. So any chance to maybe come in and use that is a good thing, I'm thinking. Okay, there we go. We've got a bit of a frame going on there. I'm going to go over those lines and draw in the frame now, the Staedtler pigment liners, because this is 0.5, one of my nice thick liners, and I do want a bit of a good frame going on along here. I do like the way the texture of this paper is still coming through, giving that really kind of grungy look, which is what I wanted for that sort of worn out post-apocalyptic kind of vibe I'm going for. Everything is battered and worn out because we are 200 years in the future. Everything is battered and worn out, kind of post-apocalyptic looking. So that's what I was going for, and I think we've achieved it. I'm hoping my lady will work on top of this paper. My other option I was thinking was maybe just blacking out the whole background. But I thought this would be a little bit quicker, a bit more fun messing around with the chalk pastels there. So let's get our lady cut out and we'll see how she looks on top of this background. I'll just use the back of this paper pad as my cutting mat. I'll go and wash my hands and get this little lady cut out. There's our lady all cut out now, so it's time to get on with our glue stick and get her stuck onto our chalk pastel background here. Hopefully that'll work out okay. Yeah, I think that'll work pretty well, so I'm going to go ahead and get her stuck onto there, and then I'll catch up with you when she's done. I've gotten a lady all stuck down now. I'm just going to add a little bit of orange around the edges just to emphasize these kind of rusty areas that we had going on. But I don't think there's too much more that she'll need to be done. This is the Arteza orange. I might come in as well with the burnt ochre, the same kind of colour I was using on her skin, just to bring out these rusty areas of the edges of this shape in the background. And what I'm thinking I might do is go in with the white gel pen outline, just to bring her out even more from this background. Just for fun more than anything, and to bring her out a little bit more from the background as I'm looking at it. I think, yeah, it's missing something. So maybe if I bring in this white gel pen outline, that'll bring her out a little bit more. And once I've done that, we will be good. So once I finish these little finishing touches here, and I've got where I'm pleased, where I think that I'm pretty much done, I'll zoom us out and we can see the whole picture all together. There we are, there's our finished piece, and I am super happy with how she's turned out, I think. I did go ahead and add a few more bits of orange around these rusty areas of this background shape just to bring out that contrast between the orangey red and the blue, and I think that has really worked well. I did actually go over our frame, the frame that we drew in with the black fine liner. I went over that with the gel pen as well, and I really love these areas where the white gel pen was kind of stuttering along there because it's starting to run out of ink. And it stuttered along as I was trying to draw along the ruler there. I think that's really added to the kind of grungy, sort of apocalyptic look that I was going for. And yeah, that background really works a lot better than the plain white, I think. And adding this white outline and doing the frame in the white has really kind of given it that boost that it needed, I think. And I'm super happy now. I really, really love how she's turned out. And just to show the kind of difference from the picture that we did start out with, I have brought in the original picture from the Ladies of Leisure 2, Zan von Zed, the one that we used as our base. We can see there she is in the book. I don't really want to show the whole picture, but there she is in the book. You can see there that we've really changed that costume a lot more than I probably could have gotten away with by colouring in the actual book, because we got rid of this corset back and changed the sleeves, added the Pip-Boy on her wrist. I think we couldn't probably have gotten away with that in the book. And of course we changed the background a lot. We got rid of these trees, because trees are not one of the things that I really love to colour anyways, but we got rid of those trees, added in this blocky shape just with the metal texture to it. And yeah, you can really see there is a heck of a difference there between how it started and how we finished her off. And yeah, once again, it's super happy with that. I think it's really got that Fallout vibe that I was going for. If anybody has played the game or watched the TV series, maybe you can tell me yeah, how well I've actually done with that. But I think it has done super well. I am really happy with her. Hopefully you have enjoyed this video. If you did enjoy the video, please consider liking and subscribing. Take care everyone, and I'll see you in future videos. Bye!